depending on where you're joining from today. Thank you for joining our weekly live recording of our Transformation Ground Control podcast. So appreciate you all joining. You get to be part of the live production of our weekly podcast by being here today. Our interview today is lessons from 25 years of cloud ERP software. And I'm going to introduce our guest here in just a moment, who I'm really excited to have on this show because I've never interviewed him on the show before. And I think many of you will be, if you don't know who he is, I think you should know who he is, and you'll know after today who he is. So really appreciate you all being here and appreciate our guest being here, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Got a lot of questions for our guests, but it's more important to hear from you and what questions you have. So if you have questions as we go here, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I'll keep an eye on those and I'll get to as many of those questions as I can. So be sure to drop those questions in the chat. And if you haven't already, if you don't mind, speaking of the chat, just drop in the chat what city and country you're joining from today. This is a global audience we typically reach out to or reach every week in this podcast. So I'd love hearing what city and country everyone's joining from here today. So please drop that in the chat if you don't mind. That helps us understand where you're all from. And it's always interesting to see as well. And again, drop any questions you have in that chat as well as we go. Today's topic, again, is lessons from 25 years of cloud ERP software. This podcast or this interview will get edited and we'll add some additional content to it and make it part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast, which gets released every Wednesday. So this discussion will be part of next Wednesday's episode that comes out. You can find that podcast at transformationgroundcontrol.com. So be sure to check it out if you haven't already. And transformationgroundcontrol.com is where you can find that. You can also subscribe on all the audio podcast platforms as well that are out there. So 25 years of cloud ERP software. Our guest today is Evan Goldberg, who is not only the senior vice president of Oracle NetSuite, but he's the guy that started NetSuite, which is what's I think is super cool about this conversation. So Evan, thanks for being here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So to start, for those that maybe don't know a lot about you or about NetSuite, tell us a little bit about yourself and about NetSuite.
Sure. So NetSuite is a business application for fast-growing businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, kind of giving you everything you need to manage and grow your business sort of all in one place. That includes capabilities that have traditionally been called ERP, CRM, HCM, et cetera, all those TLAs. But really, it's about helping you grow and transform your business, giving you the best information you can get to help you grow and make great decisions. So that's what I do, is run this organization at Oracle. We started as a startup 25 years ago. I founded it actually with Larry Ellison, so we were sort of always a cousin of Oracle. I joke that when we got back together with Oracle, it was like cousins marrying, but second cousins.
Right.
So ran the company from a startup in a small apartment above a hair salon back in 1998. Built it to be a company that went public in 2007, and we were acquired by Oracle in 2016. And over 25 years, we've helped tens of thousands of companies. We have over 37,000 customers right now using NetSuite to help run their business and achieve their visions.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a cool story. Now you mentioned that you started the company with Larry Ellison. You were at Oracle prior, right? So you were working for Larry.
That's where I started my career. Larry interviewed me back in the day when he would interview basically everybody coming into the company. It was already 900 people, but he'd still managed to find the time to interview at least all the engineers that were coming in. So right out of, while I was in college, I interviewed with Larry and struck up a friendship and a relationship with him. I started another company after I left Oracle. He helped out with that more financially. It was more really just my idea, building on some of the stuff I'd done at Oracle. And that was right at the dawn of the internet. That didn't work out. It was sort of my mandatory Silicon Valley failure. But I learned a lot about running a business, and that's what inspired me to want to do business software. And I came back to Larry with that idea, saying, he used to call me, he called the stuff I did graphics, my graphics stuff. We were building an application to help people make their sites more interactive. And he asked me how my graphics stuff was going. And I said, not so great. We have huge competition. We have a loyal set of customers, but we haven't been able to grow the business the way I'd like to. But what I've seen is that I think I want to pivot into business software because I've seen the sort of dearth of good tools for running a business. I mean, in running our business, we had so many different tools. We were running on QuickBooks on someone's computer. QuickBooks did not yet run online. It was many years from running online. We used a web store that was disconnected from our financials, and we had support happening out of someone's email, and sales was out of a contact database. None of this information was integrated. There was no way to find out who really our customers were. There was no sort of single place to go to get the information that I needed. And so I saw that lack and wanted to really try to address that. Larry, at the same time, had been thinking deeply about how applications were going to be delivered in the internet age, and really was enamored with this idea of delivering applications over the internet. And that really was ultimately the idea that led to the cloud. So sort of in a 5-minute phone conversation, when he asked me how things were going, we dreamed up this idea of building a business application. He very much wanted to start with accounting. I wanted to build sort of a more comprehensive application. I actually wanted to start with sales. And a maybe somewhat ironic aside, since we didn't start with sales, is that a few months later, my friend Mark Benioff, who I worked very closely with at Oracle, said, he was going to start one of these companies, also one of these internet companies delivering software over the internet, and he was going to do sales. And I said, yeah, that'll probably work out pretty well. And it did. So that really was the genesis of the company, this idea that we'd build ultimately, an entire suite of applications to help these fast-growing businesses and delivered over the internet, so they didn't have to manage the computers and manage the operating systems and the networks, et cetera. They could really focus on running their business, and they could use it anytime, anywhere. And that principle of marrying the net with the suite is what was sort of our animating principle through the entire 25 years and remains the focus today.
So to clarify, though, you guys beat Salesforce to market. Is that correct?
3 months or so. We started our company about 3 months before Salesforce did. So they did it in an apartment in San Francisco, and we did it in an apartment in Menlo Park.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, very interesting. So I guess I'm curious, though. It's just to put this in context. I mean, we talk about cloud and creating a cloud solution now, and you think, okay, there's a lot of cloud solutions out there. But this is 1998, and a lot of people may not remember 1998. I mean, this is back when, I know Matthew Perry recently passed away. This is back when Friends was famous.
Oh, yeah.
And
we've been celebrating our 25 years, so we know all the stuff that was around. Beanie Babies and the Macarena and all that.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at, is like in pop culture. Just to put it in context, it was a long time ago.
Yes.
And not just pop culture was different, but the technology was so different. And it's fascinating to me to think about how you had this vision that somehow the cloud was a good idea, because at the time it was not at all obvious it was a good idea. Now you think, yeah, of course.
No, and you know what? I'll give the credit to Larry. I knew I wanted to somehow use the internet in building business applications, because obviously everything needed to be connected. But this notion that you'd run it in the browser, that was his. And it took me a few months to really see it. Once we got our financial information into our own product, into NetSuite, once it was called NetLedger at the time, once we had the capabilities to actually manage our own finances, and then I could see in the browser all the information you needed. And that was really my vision. It was all about all the information from your business. When I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to work. I mean, just the access to your information anytime, anywhere, and that it was going to work. You had to actually build it to see, right. Oh yeah, an application like this will function properly for managing your business. So he was a little ahead of me on that one, but I went along for the ride. And but again, I think nowadays, when everything is in the cloud and it's taken for granted, and it would be very strange to go to a company and say, we want to give you these tools to help manage your business, and you have to run them yourself on your own computer. I mean, people would look at you like you were crazy. Now, I think what our the 25 years of building one system that encompasses all the key things you do for a business: acquiring and growing customers, creating and delivering your products and services, hiring and empowering your employees, and optimizing, your cash and your profits, all that sort of functionality within your business, and all those processes when your business, having one place you can go that ties it all together, and then gives you, tied up with a nice little bow on one page in your browser, everything you need to know about your growing business. That's sort of what I think is still quite novel and benefits from the 25 years we've been doing that.
Right. Right. And you start the company in 98, cloud-based solution. You're working with Larry Ellison. You called it Net Ledger at first. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was sort of a failure of vision, I would say. I mean, because that was our first product, and it very well described exactly what the initial customers were getting. But we snapped out of it once we started building the other capabilities like CRM and e-commerce. We're like, oh yeah, this is a lot more than NetLedger. So then we called the product NetSuite, kept the company name NetLedger. Then we got a new CEO. I moved into the chairman role and the chief technology officer role. And Zach Nelson, who was our longtime CEO over most of the history of the company, was immediately like, well, we need to call the company NetSuite. That's really what we do. And so we changed the name, and it stuck.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it does have a better ring, and it's more descriptive of what you guys do as
Exactly.
well. So that was a good move. So Larry Ellison has a vision for the cloud. He obviously helped finance the company. Was he at all involved in the in the management or the creation of the product or anything like that?
Well, okay, so certainly from a high level strategy perspective, he was involved, and I would meet with him and talk to him frequently. But the one time that he really dived into the product itself, probably about 2.5 years in, we announced a feature called the Executive Dashboard. And that was really my sort of dream feature. That was sort of really, for me at that time, the culmination of my vision, which was sort of one place, a page. You log into NetSuite, and it would give you your key information that you needed to know, the key things that you needed to do, again, all in one place. So we announced this feature called the Executive Dashboard. And of course, every time we did any kind of announcement to the press, we were very good about including Larry Ellison's name in the information, right, which would help it get picked up. And so, yeah, so there's probably some article written, and maybe his Google alert for stories that say Larry Ellison. I seriously doubt he has that. But in fact, I'm quite sure he doesn't. But somehow he got wind of this, and he called me and he said, oh, you have this dashboard now. Okay, well, now I want to log in to NetSuite's account, and I'm going to actually use it. And so over the subsequent 2 months, so not only could he see how we were using his money, but he could also look at the dashboard. And so he basically became the product manager of the dashboard at that point. And he would call me every couple of days and say, here's what you need to do. You need to add this drop down that will allow you to change the periods of comparison on everything on the dashboard. You need to add this new chart that shows your performance in sales this month versus any previous similar time period. So I would dutifully, program that, or one of my team would, and then I'd call them and say, okay, try it now. It was much easier to release software back then.
Right.
And, that was a really fun time because we were really collaborating, at a deep kind of product level rather than just at the strategy level. And some of the things that he had us do survive to NetSuite to this very day, 20 plus years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just put it in context for those that maybe weren't around in the late 90s when this was all happening.
Wait, were people that weren't around?
Yeah.
I constantly talk to the employees at NetSuite, and I'm like, this was before you were born. Or you were two at the time. You were probably playing with Beanie Babies at the time that this happened.
Right, exactly. And you were starting a software company while they were playing with Beanie Babies.
Exactly.
But if you put it in context, though, it sounds so simple now. Like, okay, big deal, executive dashboard. But that just was not even close to being a thing back in 98. I mean, back in 98, you had, in addition to Beanie Babies and the Macarena and all this pop culture stuff we just talked about, you also had green screens. That was still kind of the primary user interface, was I had a green screen. I'd enter some sort of memorized transaction code. It wasn't even a GUI or a graphical user interface oftentimes. So these companies are using these really outdated systems, at least some of the bigger ones were. QuickBooks maybe wasn't so cumbersome, but point being that the executive dashboard is one page sort of thing that just wasn't a thing. And you guys created that, which is pretty cool back then.
Right. No, it was neat. And it was really, again, the culmination of a lot of work to allow you to do all these different functionalities, all these different capabilities, manage all these capabilities in your business that normally were disconnected and weren't tied together, like your sales process and your financial processes, and if you did e-commerce and your people processes, et cetera.
Right. I want to turn to the audience real quickly and just acknowledge where some people are joining from today. We've got people from Denver, Colorado, Atlanta, Georgia in the U.S., Calgary, Alberta, Canada, British Columbia, Canada. This is from Ron on LinkedIn. He says he's excited to be online here. Big fan of Evan. So you've got some fans here. Jeremy from Los Angeles, Dennis from India. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate that. And curious to hear where everyone else is joining from today. One thing I wanted to ask you too, though, in the context, and I'm actually going to shift gears in a moment and kind of look to the future too. So we're not just going to dwell on back in the good old days of '98. We're actually going to get to like where we are today and where we're going in the future. But one thing I want to understand is I'm fascinated by the fact that you guys create this cloud solution. Remember the whole ASP movement, the application service provider movement. It sort of got a lot of hype.
Sometimes that would include us, but sometimes it was more like just running an on-premise application in a data center and giving you sort of remote access to that application, which was obviously different than what we were doing, which was sort of pure cloud.
Yeah. And that's where I was going with it. I remember that ASP model getting a bit of hype from analysts, and it seemed like, that might get some traction and take off. And it never really did, at least not in the early 2000s, whenever that was. How did you guys, you were built in the cloud, you stuck with the cloud, you never went on premise, you never, did you ever, I guess my question is, did you ever look at this ASP movement that sort of came and went, and on premise just stuck around for a long time, and in some pockets of the industry still is sticking around? But did you ever question the cloud, or was it ever frustrating that the cloud didn't take off sooner? Or like, how did you guys persevere?
It was definitely frustrating. The way I remember it, we'd have to go to relatively conservative parts of the business because we were starting with the financials. And so we were talking to controllers and CFOs of fast growing companies, and they were maybe the most risk averse. And so convincing them to try this new thing and put their data on the internet could be a challenge. Now, typically what I'd do is I'd say, well, where's your data now? And they'd say, oh, it's in this computer over there in our closet with the coffee stain on it. And I'm like, you're not concerned that someone could steal that computer? It seems like it's not very secure. We keep our computers in this, modern data center where you need a handprint to get in. So that was step one. But often, we definitely rode the coattails of the Salesforce.com hype machine. And so, of course, many of these companies were also using Salesforce.com. And I say to the CFO, that your entire customer list and prospect list is already on the internet, and you're really worried that they want your income statement. So,
right.
It certainly did help that the Mark and his marketing prowess was telling the world that you didn't need software. He called it no software, which we would laugh about a little bit behind the scenes, because we'd be like, well, feels like we're developing software, but apparently not. But that was, in effect, one of those effective, not completely accurate slogans, but that captured people's attention and got people to think about, maybe I don't want to manage software, and maybe I want someone else to do it for me. Maybe this stuff really should be a service. I mean, one of the most revolutionary things about the whole cloud movement for business software is, and we realized it very early on, just months into the company, we were months into our product. Our first product was released less than a year from when we started the company. And a few months later, we're upgrading customers to the next version, and there's some problems with the upgrade, and we're having like the typical problems that a customer normally had to have. And that's when it occurred to us, oh, we're delivering a service. Like they they need us to be doing this all the time, 24/7. Customers would come in with problems with their e-commerce site on like Christmas Eve, and we had to fix them because we were a service. We
Mm,
weren't just writing software and throwing it over the wall and daring them to install it and run it. So in that sense, Mark's slogan was right. It was no longer software, it was a service, and thus the
mm.
name software as a service.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's a big cultural shift, I imagine, too, for a bunch of techies and developers and people that are used to
Absolutely.
creating
Yeah.
software, not a service.
Well, and fortunately, we got over that quite quickly, and there were only a few of us. So changing the culture from a product to a service was quite easy, and then has sort of imbued, our DNA ever since then.
Yeah, yeah. So here's a comment from Na from Miami on LinkedIn. Na says, great to be reminded how far we've come along. So thank you for that comment. And here's a question from Kyler on LinkedIn. And she asks, looking back, what is one piece of knowledge you wish you had before deploying and building and creating this cloud solution?
That's a great question. I think I don't know that there's one piece of knowledge I wish I had. Certainly, I think um, well, I mentioned the name of the company. I wish we'd been smart enough to be a little more visionary in naming the company. Obviously, years later, that's just a little blip, but at the time, it was hard. So I guess I wish I'd known that we were actually going to be successful at all these other pieces that we needed to do. Um, I, you know, I, the road to getting people to the cloud, as I said, was hard, and it was like pushing, a big boulder up a hill. So I guess at the time, where you always have doubts when you're building something, and I guess I wish I had known that this was going to be just taken for granted. I mean, Larry was very convinced. He would say, oh yeah, this is how people are going to be deploying applications for the next 1,000 years. I don't know what's going to happen after that. Well, we're 25 years in, and he only has 975 years to be right.
Right.
So I guess
Yeah.
just the knowledge, even the knowledge that this was inevitable, I guess would have maybe helped us uh, in that we would have not second guessed anything we did.
Right.
I mean, there were customers that asked us, "Oh, could we keep the data at our location?" Um, because we're not sure we trust the cloud. Unfortunately, we said no, but maybe we would have said no a little faster if we'd known that. Believe me, you will not be asking that question in 10 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny to think about it. It wasn't that long ago where I heard that all the time from CIOs. Like, I don't know that I trust the cloud. I trust my server in the back room that's not locked, but I don't trust
Exactly.
it's just funny to think that wasn't that long ago that was the mindset. So kudos for sticking with it. I think that's a
Yeah.
good case study in
A lot of
perseverance and
successes just, yeah, is showing up
yeah.
every day.
Well, and it's interesting now because, I always mention this to potential buyers of enterprise tech, especially ones that are enamored by the cloud or SaaS solutions. And they might be looking at, um, SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever, in addition to potentially NetSuite. And it's always, you always have to say, look at how the software is built. Are you really getting a cloud solution with many of your competitors, with a lot of the ERP vendors out there? Are you really getting a cloud solution, or are you getting an on-premise system that they're trying to move to the cloud as we speak, and they're selling it as a cloud solution? Whereas with NetSuite, you know what you're getting, for better or for worse. You know exactly what you're getting with NetSuite. It was built in the cloud. It's not, you're not trying to make that transition now like a lot of software vendors are. All right,
Yeah,
what are your
no, that's true. And users won't necessarily see it superficially because they're using it in a browser and they're like, oh, this is a cloud solution. But when you sort of, build a cloud solution with, shoestring and bubble gum, and really under the covers, it was architected to be on premise. What you end up with is, for example, people on many different versions. And what that means is that just stifles innovation. Obviously, you don't get access to the latest capabilities until you're willing to, upgrade. Um, and so that, the speed of upgrades, the speed with which we can make sure that everybody gets all the innovation that we're doing is due to the fact that we really have truly we're running one system in the cloud. We're not running a bunch of different versions. We're not running a bunch of different things for different customers. So on the surface, you might not see these differences between the architecture on the surface, but you'll see them ultimately in your experience of using these different products.
Right, right. Now, when you look at the 25 years so far with NetSuite, what accomplishment or accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, I'm certainly extremely proud of the companies that we've been able to help grow and the achievements that they've had and the visions that they've been able to achieve. I mean, we're really just there to help. We don't make your business work. Ultimately, that's your idea, your sweat, your toil, and whether your vision really is something that people want, and continue to build it and architect it in such a way that you please your customers and they want to come back. So we just help with that. So certainly I'm very, very proud that we've helped with so many amazing companies that are doing incredible things, and also lots of amazing nonprofits. We have a large footprint in nonprofits that, in nonprofits these days really do want to run like a company. They, their ROI, the R in their ROI is impact maybe versus dollars, but they still want that ROI, and we help give them that. And so that's certainly one of the things I'm most proud of, and the team that we've built. You never are successful in these companies without amazing people, and many of the people that I work with still on a day-to-day basis have been through most of NetSuite's history, 10, 15, 20 years with the company. At the same time as we continue to bring amazing new people into the organization that can bring new ideas, but within the sort of framework of our culture. So the people and the culture that we built, and I think that ultimately gets reflected in the products that we deliver. So that's certainly another thing that I'm incredibly proud of.
Yeah, very cool. Now, I had the opportunity to go to NetSuite or to Suite World, which is your annual conference, a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas, and you and I got to meet there, and I got to meet a lot of people in the NetSuite community there. But one thing you mentioned, and you talked about a couple things in your keynote. You talked about a lot of things in your keynote, but when I asked you to summarize for one of my YouTube videos that just came out, sort of my debrief of Suite World, I asked you kind of like, what are you most excited about, when you think about the most important developments that you're working on right now, you and your team are working on now at NetSuite. And you talked about artificial intelligence, and then you talked about, I'll call it user experience, even though you have maybe a different definition of that, or a broader definition than just user experience. But those are the two things you mentioned to me when I asked you, when I said, what are the two biggest things? And you said AI, user experience. Can you maybe talk about why those two things are so important?
I think user experience is a great way of putting it. I mean, that is pretty all encompassing. What is your experience of using this business application? And the experience of using business applications typically has been less than ideal. I mean, people are sort of forced to use it, and they come into work and they're like, oh, okay, I got to navigate my way through this thing that's kind of confusing and clunky. And the next generation of business users, the next generation of employees in business come from a world where they have incredibly rich technology at their fingertips, on their phones and, on their laptops, et cetera, that, they're using for their daily life, their personal life. And they come in and that's sort of what they're expecting. Like, why can't my business application be like that? And so that's what we're striving for is, an application that you come in on Monday morning and you don't mind using. You actually might even like it. It helps you get your job done. It uses a lot of the techniques that you're familiar with that are being used in other applications that are on your phone or on your laptop. And so I think that's incredibly important. And we've been working on it for many years, and we've been collaborating with Oracle, which I didn't expect when I came back here that Oracle would have such a deep investment in the user experience and changing and revolutionizing what it's like to interact with these applications. And then AI is very much a part of that. These two efforts of improving the business user experience and delivering, what human-like assistance and advice, they're very interconnected. And I think that The interface of the future may involve a lot of talking. I mean, that's what we're doing on our phones more and more. A conversational UI requires AI. So that's, they're deeply interconnected. And of course, what the user experience should be delivering is great advice and assistance for your business. And that's what we believe that AI has the capability to do by the rich data that we have in NetSuite, which really encompasses all of your key business processes, tying that all together and then being able to make predictions, suggest things, automate things, help you get through the drudgery of your everyday work so that you can instead concentrate on strategy and other aspects of the business that maybe you can add more value. That's what we're all about at NetSuite, and it's the next revolution after the cloud, the way I see it. In the ability, the cloud allowed us to build a sophisticated application that encompasses much of your business and then deliver it anytime, anywhere. That was revolutionary. Now we can go to the next level in the type of advice and assistance we can give you to really make this application orders of magnitude more effective in helping you grow your business and achieve your vision. So super excited about sort of both those efforts.
Yeah, it's very cool. And when I asked people at the conference, so I put out a YouTube video where I was at Suite World, and I asked people what they're most excited about with the NetSuite developments and the announcements that had happened at Suite World. And hands down, AI was the number one response. I mean, I can't even remember what the close second, if there was no close second, but I don't even recall.
No, well, and of course, it's all you read about these days, and so everybody's just getting from sort of the general media the sense that there is a revolution, and this one does feel different than the last hype cycle. Yeah. And there have been hype cycles in the last 25 years that didn't really pan out, and they were more like technologists being very enamored with something. This feels very different. And obviously, obviously because of the general press, but also I think people can see much more clearly how it's going to help them in their daily lives. And that's what we're in this for, is to help people in their daily work lives move faster, do more with less. And I think people see, this is really going to, I mean, the very nature of some of the large language models is they help you develop content much more quickly than you could before, research things more quickly than you could before. And so that's, a great example, doing more with less. We think AI is much more to offer than that over time. And all aspects of using these applications and running your business, it's all about that efficiency and productivity you can get when the computer can do more, allowing you to, shift your focus to higher value tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very cool.
People really, they get it because they know they have a lot of things in their life that they could really, really benefit from being made more productive, more efficient, or taking it off their plate completely in some cases.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you just a moment ago talk about how, the purpose of NetSuite is to help companies grow. I think that's super fascinating because you don't hear that enough in this space. It's all about the technology and we're building cool stuff, and that's cool. But I like how you have this broader purpose that you seem to be
we want to be purposely uncool. I mean, like, obviously we want to use cool technology when it will help, but a lot of what we do, some of what we do is just getting out of people's way. I mean, the best user experience in some cases is no user experience. Let me give you an example. Like, everybody that works for a company has to deal with expense reports, and you can have a cool interface to allow you to drag and drop and associate this expense with this category, blah, blah, blah. That all looks cool. But what you really want to happen is take a picture of the receipt and then get reimbursed. And that's the entire experience. Right. And so that's like, there's no user interface in between that. The user interface is your camera and then looking at your bank account and seeing you got reimbursed. Right. I mean, that should be the user experience. So in that sense, behind the scenes, there's some super cool technology, but it's not actually exposed to the user. And it's really just sort of getting out of the user's way, getting out of an employee's way, so that, again, they're not doing expense reports, they're doing things that are more useful.
Yeah, right. Here's a spicier question from the audience here, from Dennis on LinkedIn. How are you, or how's NetSuite, not you personally, but how's NetSuite better than SAP Business One? Curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, every customer has to decide, what is right for them. We've found that in a lot of cases, NetSuite has an advantage because it is more of an all-encompassing application that cover, against many different solutions. It has more capabilities across the board to really automate these larger things that you're doing in your business, not just, reporting your financials. So that's one advantage we have over some other products. Some other products are, like we described earlier, not built for the cloud. They are on-premise applications that in some cases are being hosted. They've sort of been repurposed for the cloud, but then you're always on a different version from other customers. It's harder for the software company to be able to deliver value, and you don't necessarily get that value if you're not on the right version. So that's the difference between sort of like the application service provider model that you described from 20 years ago, and a true cloud solution. So those are some of the things that when we look at other, when companies look at other products, might attract them to NetSuite.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you compete often in certain parts of the world? Do you compete often with SAP Business One, or who are your main competitors?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the solutions we see. Honestly, our biggest competition is a company deciding not yet. I don't need something like NetSuite yet, and so they don't do anything, sort of status quo. And but inevitably, what I say to those customers is, you're going to do it, and get on the bandwagon now. I mean, certainly, if you're a tech company, 2/3 plus of tech companies are going public on NetSuite. So I'm like, just, it's easier to do it earlier, so just do it. But still, it's got to be the right time for companies. So that's sort of typically what we compete against. But certainly people do evaluations and have to find the solution that's right for them in their industry. There's some industries that we don't generally cover, though that's increasing rapidly. We have an organization here at Oracle that serves local government. And unbeknownst to us, they were evaluating, wow, we think NetSuite could be a great solution for local governments. And so now there's an Oracle Governments that's built on NetSuite. And they took some of the capabilities we'd built for not-for-profits, and they used NetSuite's extensibility layer. I mean, the other part of NetSuite that I'm super, super proud of is how easy it is to extend NetSuite. I mean, I came to this world from building application development tools. That's what my first company, Embed Software, was doing. That's what I was doing back in the day at Oracle. And so I didn't know really anything about accounting except for a user. On the first day of NetLedger, I had to go out and buy an accounting textbook. Fortunately, I soon hired a product manager that knew much more than I did. But what I did know is how to rapidly build applications, low-code application developments before it was cool. I mean, I was working on low-code application developments back in literally the 80s. At Oracle. And so that was sort of built into NetSuite, is this ability to easily extend it without, necessarily going to code, though we do have JavaScript and something we call SuiteScript, which is extensions to JavaScript, the world's most popular programming language, if you do want to extend NetSuite with code. And of course, a lot of our partners use that. So this ability to extend NetSuite is what this local government organization in Oracle, they took that and they built all the capabilities that are needed by local government. Now we have a product for local government. So that's super exciting, is the extension of NetSuite into industries that maybe we do cover a ton of industries. And by the way, this is an aside, this whole notion of industries is rapidly changing because companies are blurring the lines. We've been saying this for years. Service companies are becoming product companies. Product companies are becoming service companies. You see it in many of the consumer products that we use that are a combination of a piece of hardware and a service. And NetSuite is sort of uniquely, that's another, when we talk about other products, they may be particularly good at one part of that equation, but now you really need to be good at everything. And we have very powerful companies capabilities for service, companies that deliver services, and very powerful capabilities for companies that deliver products. So sort of a hybrid company, which is increasingly how a lot of companies are being built, benefits from our expertise in both of those areas.
Very interesting. Kind of along those lines, though, you're talking about extensibility and development of the solution. If you want to extend the capabilities, this is a question from LinkedIn. What are your views on the customization some of the NetSuite customers are making
Yeah,
on their end? Do you see that as a risk with too much
that's a
customization?
fantastic question. And we saw years ago that this could be a double-edged sword. And even within, we have a kind of unique organization in this way also, which also separates us from some of these other products, in that we have a very, very robust customer success and customer delivery organization where we do the implementation. NetSuite does the implementations for the majority of our customers. And we've built a incredible team and an incredible methodology there. Obviously, we also generally are the ones we do sell through partners, but generally NetSuite sells it. We're really a full service organization that there hasn't really ever existed something like that for companies in this size, that have outgrown their initial accounting package, but aren't ready and maybe never ready for these big applications like SAP. And, there really hasn't been this offering of a sort of one-stop shop that can sell you the capabilities and service them and implement them, do post go live services to help you become successful. And obviously we build it ourselves. But in the earlier days of NetSuite, even our team and sometimes partners would take the fact that you could build anything on NetSuite. I mean, it is a full application development environment. You could build NetSuite on NetSuite. And maybe went too far, kind of gave companies a blank canvas and said, what do you want to do? And we'll do it. We saw the pitfalls of that. And I think that's what the questioner is sort of referring to, that you can get too much customization, it becomes hard to maintain. People leave your company or wherever and don't understand that stuff because it's so complicated. Well, there's a bunch of things we've done to do that. I mean, you only get down into code if you need to. We have very easy point and click customization to add new data types to NetSuite, to manage workflows. We have a workflow manager that's point and click. So we have a lot of tools that help you avoid getting in code. But nevertheless, we saw this issue and we determined to change it. And really one of the most revolutionary things we've done in NetSuite is something called Suite Success, which is where we take the best practices that we've been implementing one at a time for customers in a particular industry, in a particular segment, in a particular geography, and bundle them up so that you don't have to do them. And then what that leads to is when we show you NetSuite in a sales situation, that's actually what you're going to get, because we have chosen what we call the Suite Success Edition, which is the package of these appropriate best practice capabilities for your type of company. We've packaged that together. That's what we show you when we demo the product. That's what we implement when it comes time to implement. And so selling what we deliver and delivering what we sell is a really important part of our strategy. Of course, every customer is different, but when you go to them and ask what you want and say, by the way, in your industry, here's how we have implemented the, procure to pay process. And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, yeah, the thing that we're doing, we came up with ourselves when we were 10 people, and it actually isn't working great for us now. And that looks great. And so they'll adopt a lot of the best practices and approaches that we have in Suite Success. But sometimes for their secret sauce and what makes them special, they're like, no, we have to do this particular thing. This is how we do our product delivery, or this is, a particular part of it. There's this part of order management that's very special that we think is better than our competition. And so for that part, maybe 10%, we can go in and really customize it to make sure it is implemented the way you need it, to make sure your business is putting its best foot forward on what you're best at. So that's sort of what we've evolved to. And I think that is how we address the problem that I think that question is referring to.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great point, and I think it's a good balance. And I was fascinated at Suite World too, by the way, with how many partners are in your ecosystem that are creating these not custom solutions, but they're creating within the NetSuite platform. They're creating niche or industry best
Industry
practices. And
specific,
yeah,
or extending some capabilities of NetSuite where we may not go far enough for some companies. It's great, and that is certainly another thing I'm incredibly proud of. And that is especially I'm incredibly proud of it because they're using this platform, which, as I said, that's the thing I actually knew about when I started NetSuite. So that's really exciting to me, and something that we will always continue to nourish and value as part of our offering.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so here's a question from let me pull it up here. It's getting a little bit sort of technical, but not super technical, I suppose. This is from Liberty on YouTube. Liberty asks, a lot of SaaS have moved services to AWS or Google Cloud. While this may be more reliable because of the infrastructure these two giants have, it also concentrates the catastrophic risk in two companies. So it's a comment more than anything, but
Yeah,
I'm just
I
curious
mean,
to.
interesting. I mean, we've made no secret of the fact that we've moved to Oracle's cloud infrastructure, which is, a similar um, hyperscaler, big provider of computing power over the internet. And that's been great for us. It allows us to expand to new data centers around the world. It kind of gives this, it's the same promise they give us as we gave to customers back in the day. Like we said, you don't have to manage operating systems and you don't have to manage software upgrades and compatibility. Well, they're like, you don't have to manage computers and networks, and we'll do that for you, and that's great. It just allows us to focus on what's important in our business. And all of our customers on OCI, they've seen significant performance gains. As I said, we can put all of our Australia customers in an Australia data center. So that's been super exciting for us. And, it's a similar promise that I think these other services are providing to software companies. And the fact we had to build everything ourselves back in the day. I joke about how, and, I'd go to customers and say, we manage your data in a professionally managed data center. Well, the first version of NetLedger was in a computer in our office, just like our customers.
Right.
We didn't have access to AWS or Azure or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure back then. We had to do it ourselves. So I guess I envy a little bit the next generation startups that have that available to them.
Right. Yeah. It definitely lowers the barriers to entry for sure. I
Sure.
imagine compared to what you dealt with back in '98, especially. Um, when you think about the enterprise tech space in general, what do you think the biggest misconception is that analysts and potential buyers have about NetSuite? In other words, where does perception not match reality in your
Well,
opinion?
I think they call us cloud ERP. And look, we're guilty of marketing ourselves as cloud ERP because there's a certain group of people that understand that, though I'm not sure it's all of next generation entrepreneurs that know either what that stands for or even heard of it. So we have to, that's just part of our sort of outreach strategy. But I think these industry terms like ERP and CRM and HCM are somewhat constraining. So I think the misconception is that we are just a cloud ERP provider when we really
Mhm.
provide much more, because again, we're thinking about it much more holistically. We're trying to break down the barriers between these different sort of industry terms that we've come up with as an industry that really aren't connected to how users think about their business, especially fast growing companies that are still very interleaved and weaved together. Everybody's doing everything. And like, the person that's doing sales is also, probably uh, screwing in, things into the wall and doing facilities at the same time. I mean, everybody, that's the nature of a startup. I've been there a couple times, and everything is really tightly tied together. And that was my frustration when I had this 15-person company with like 6 different applications to run our business. That's like one application per 2.5 people. I mean,
Right.
that's too
Right.
many. So I think that's maybe the misconception, is that we fall into one of these traditional software categories when really we're doing something that's quite different in encompassing so much of what you do as a fast growing startup.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes total sense. Um, Here's a really interesting question that just came from LinkedIn. This is from Neelan on LinkedIn. And he says, as demand for NetSuite grows, how does NetSuite think about training talent within the ecosystem, both on the implementation and post implementation
Yeah.
side?
I mean, and we have a very sophisticated and broad education program that we deliver to users and to partners that encompasses all the the capabilities of NetSuite, and multimodal. I mean, obviously there's written documentation, there's videos, there's classes. So we definitely put an emphasis on education, and everybody that has NetSuite has access to that. And then there's ability to do more custom things. Some customers want sort of customized education for their company, but it's incredibly important. Of course, we want to make the software self-documenting to the degree that we can, but especially for developers, there's always going to be a need for that. And that's why we have things like SuiteWorld. SuiteWorld is an ability, with all the sessions, to learn a ton, and then also make the connections that you need, to be able to get your questions answered down the road. And again, you talked about all the partners we have. We're fortunate; many of those partners are have been started up by people that have worked at NetSuite in the past, and we never like anyone leaving NetSuite, but if they go to a partner and help them be successful at something that's going to help our ecosystem, that's a positive thing. So it's definitely a process. There's always a need for people with NetSuite skills and education. I'd encourage people, if you're involved in some way in NetSuite or in the NetSuite ecosystem, to build those skills, because I think, again, with our success in tens of thousands of companies, and we obviously have ambitions for it getting up into even more digits, there's a lot of opportunity there for people to deliver to these customers beyond what obviously we can do as a single organization.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I think that's back to your point earlier about how your biggest competition is not another software vendor per se, but it's the companies themselves, or the potential customers that are doing
Do nothing.
Yeah,
do nothing is what we call it. DN. It's a 2-letter acronym.
DN. Yeah, the dirty word that every salesperson hates to hear. But what are you guys doing how do you address some of the challenges that a smaller or high growth organization has in implementing new technology, which every organization struggles to some degree with implementing, but high growth companies, I think they have their own unique challenges.
Absolutely. And they don't want it to be a big bureaucratic heavyweight process. They're like, let's just get her done. And so we have to balance the need to do it right and do it well and use best practices with their need for it to happen quickly and easily. And they don't have a lot of time on their hands to be working on this. So we're always trying to tune our processes to make that, as painless as possible. Again, one of the biggest things is Suite success. The fact that we already have much of it implemented for you, because we've done it for 5,000 other companies like you. And then the last mile part, obviously making that as painless as possible. We're working really hard on that. Alongside our user experience is the adoption experience, and we expect to see that improve in leaps and bounds over the coming years from a lot of work that we've been doing behind the scenes. And taking our 25 years of experience of delivering these technology solutions to customers that are low on resources, that don't have an IT department, or if they do, it's one person who's also, as I said, selling on the side or what,
right,
or managing the website, or doing the, writing the marketing content. Fortunately, they have AI to do that for them now. But so that's the environment in which we deliver these solutions. And we're very attuned to that. And we're just taking, our experience and really trying to build it into the process to make it as painless and get you up and running on NetSuite, and get you that rich information, and those productivity boosts that you signed up with us for in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next? Where do you see NetSuite? How do you see NetSuite evolving and its position in the marketplace with the product itself? Where do you see the future of NetSuite?
Well, certainly, the themes we talked about earlier and that I talked about at SuiteWorld, next generation business user experience that's much more approachable, friendly, easy, AI that really helps you in your daily tasks and helps identify patterns and suggest courses of action, helps you accomplish those courses of action easily. That's where all our focus is. And I think you'll just see over the coming years more and more that come to fruition. We have a vision. In fact, I delivered a vision at Suite World of what NetSuite could look like in the future. And much of it is available right now with technology. We just have to get it done. So we are, have our nose to the grindstone on delivering this great value as soon as we can to our existing customers. Again, because everybody's on the same version, everybody's going to get it. And then they'll give us feedback and we'll improve it. We listen. That's the most important way that we improve the product, is by listening to our existing users. And I think each year in, year out, we're going to be showing how we can help customers even more easily use NetSuite to transform their companies and achieve their vision.
Yeah, very cool. Well, it's great having you here today. I appreciate you being on the live discussion here and part of the podcast. Really appreciate it. And what's the best way to learn more about NetSuite if organizations are just interested in the product?
You'll be unsurprised that my answer is go to netsuite.com.
I thought you were going to say just go to ChatGPT and ask it.
That information may be outdated.
Right, that's true. Yeah, at least a year outdated. Well, good. Well, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it, Evan. Thank you to the audience for the great questions. You'll be able to find this episode polished up, added some additional content to it for next week's episode of Transformation Ground Control. Comes out a week from tomorrow, which is Wednesday of next week. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to view tomorrow's episode or next week's episode, as well as all the past episodes you can find there as well. Transformationgroundcontrol.com. We have new episodes every week. So thanks for being part of this podcast. Hope you have a great week, and we will see you all next time, same place. We do these live discussions, same time, same place. So look forward to seeing you then. And thank you again, everyone, for joining here.